My name is Gwynevere Rorke, and my story today is going to be about my life and the traumas that I have been through. I would say that the story starts when I was about 6 years old, when my stepfather stabbed my mother. I didn't witness it necessarily, but that was kind of like where it started. My mother was heavy into drugs when she was a teenager all the way into her adulthood, and that led into my life when she had me. So I was an accident when I was conceived, and it was because she was on drugs. When she had me, it was just kind of like drug abuse here and there, or she would go out drinking, or she would leave me with her mother or sister for a few months because she wanted to go out and do this, and she would disappear. And she was always on and off with men throughout the years of my life, and she kind of settled down when she met my stepdad, which was when I was around 4 or 5, and I thought that relationship was good. To my perspective, it seemed well, but on the inside of the relationship, it was very toxic, and he was very abusive, physically, emotionally, and I'm pretty sure sexually as well. And one night, my stepfather had come home completely drunk, dyed his hair black, piercings in his face, kind of just had an impulsive night, and started a fight with my mother in the middle of the night. And I had heard them talking, and I went back to bed because I was like, that's my stepfather, I'm safe. I don't know how long later it was, but I woke up to my mother screaming my name and screaming for help, and I sat up in my bed for a few minutes before I got the courage to walk downstairs and see what was going on. And there I saw my stepfather kneeling over top of my mother in the kitchen. I panicked and I didn't know what to do, and I ran outside to my next door neighbors and just banged on the door until they answered. It was about middle of the night in late November, and after I had knocked on my neighbor's door, they had come out and they had called the cops, and by the time they had walked over to see if my mom was okay, my mom had made her way outside and my stepdad was nowhere to be seen. She told me to go back inside into my bedroom, so I did. Not long later, I heard banging on the door and my mom screaming, and she came running up the stairs into my bedroom where she slammed the door shut, and she leaned against my door, fell onto the ground, so she kind of like pushed her body up against the door and slid down onto the ground. She was on the phone with the cops. She was going in and out of consciousness. She was flicking the lights on and off. She passed me the phone before she passed out, and I sat there and spoke with the cops. There was blood all over my door, on the light switch, on my carpet. I don't remember much after that. I do know that she was taken to the hospital and she was seen right away, and she had gotten stitches. Me and my siblings went and stayed with my stepfather's mother for a weekend until my mom was discharged from the hospital. I was 6 years old. When my stepdad came into the picture, I was around 4 years old, and I did not like it. I was very iffy about him. There was just something that really set me off. And for about a year, I didn't accept him as a father figure. I didn't accept him as my mom's lover. And then about when I was 5 years old, I started calling him dad, and kind of leaning more into, okay, this could be a father figure to me. I can have a relationship with him. Around 12 in the morning, my stepfather had come home completely drunk. He rang the doorbell and I woke up the first time. My mom did not. He rang the doorbell the second time. That's when she had come downstairs and I heard them talking. Once I heard my stepfather's voice, I went back to bed because I was under the impression that everything was okay. Not long later, I'm not sure how long later, but I heard my mother screaming my name and screaming for help at the top of her lungs. So I ran to the neighbor's house. So my mom was on her back on the ground, and her legs were up in like a position as if she was giving birth. So he was on his knees hovering over her, and he had the knife in one hand, and the other hand he was not hitting her, but like doing the action of hitting her and scaring her, and he was screaming in her face. She was screaming and crying. She was laying on the ground. When she saw me, she yelled at me, and she told me, she was like, "Gwen, go get help." I didn't know if she was hurt. I didn't know if she was dying. I kind of found out that she had been stabbed or was hurt when I was making my way back into the house after talking to the neighbors, and she was making her way out of the house, and I had seen the blood trail on the ground, and she was holding her stomach. Her switch in my brain kind of flipped, and I just ran. I just ran outside in my underwear, ran across the snow to the neighbor's yard, and just started banging on the door and ringing the doorbell repeatedly. And these neighbors were an old couple, and they were very to themselves people and did not associate with the other people on the block. So I was scared to see what their reaction would be, but right away the husband came outside and told his wife to call the cops because he could tell that something was wrong and I was in distress. I was just like, my mom, my mom needs help, something's wrong. After that, he starts walking over towards our house, and I follow behind him, and he ends up running into my mother as she's making her way outside of the house. She's holding herself up against the garage wall, leaning on it for strength and making her way out. I was not sure what happened afterwards because I was told to just go inside. I'm not sure if he checked to make sure she was okay, or if she told him to leave and that she was okay, or if the cops were on the way. I'm unaware of what happened until my stepfather came back banging on the door, and I later found out that it was because he was looking for his phone. My stepfather comes back and he's banging on the door, and my mother gets scared and she comes running up the stairs to my bedroom for safety, and she slams the door behind her and she's on the phone with the cops. She's going in and out of consciousness and she's putting her body up against my door. She's ended up sliding down my door where she laid on the floor. She passed me the phone and I chatted to the cops until they got there. She was picked up by the ambulance and we were picked up by the cops. We were taken to my stepfather's mother's house and we stayed with her for the weekend, and my mother was transferred to the hospital where she stayed there for a few days. She got stitches, and after she was discharged, we went back with her. He had fled the scene, and after the cops had found him, they had arrested him and he was sentenced to jail for 2 years. After he had finished his sentence in jail, when I was around 8 years old, we were allowed to have visitation rights with him through a woman's shelter in Redmond, Alberta. To have him back around after all that, it was very hard and difficult for me to grasp the concept of. Even though I was still very young, I knew a lot more than my younger brother and my younger sister. So it was very hard for me to see how much they had loved him and cared for him. During the 2 years that he was in jail, it was treacherous for me and my family. My mother was consistently moving from place to place to place out of paranoia that he was going to come back and either kill her and us, or all of us. That fear kind of washed off onto me during those years as well. My mother was the one who filled me in on everything, and she had told me that they were arguing and fighting because he was accusing her of cheating, and they ended up in the kitchen where he ended up grabbing a knife and just stabbing her. She was stabbed just below her belly button. So when we started our weekend visitations, he was really, really, really trying to build a relationship with me, and I don't know if that was from a point of view or from I stabbed your mother point of view, but he was always giving me what I wanted, allowing me to hang out with my friends or to do these things or to play on the iPad, things that my mother wouldn't typically do. It got to the point where I was comfortable with him, and we started like doing father-daughter things together. We'd watch TV together, we'd go out on bike rides together, he'd take me to the store, just me and him, and we'd do like a little day together. The first time he had ever touched me was when we were laying on the couch watching a TV show, and he was just rubbing my back and my butt and had ended up pulling down my pants, and he had licked one of my cheeks. I was 8 at the time, and out of uncomfortability and confusion, I just pretended to roll and fall off the couch, and then I moved from that couch to a different couch. After that, it started getting a little bit more worse and worse and worse, and he was definitely testing his waters and seeing where he could get. I was very young. I did not know what was happening. I was unaware of any form of sexual action or what sex was or intercourse or any of those things. I was afraid to tell my mother, and I was afraid to tell him to stop. So it went on for 2 years until he handed himself in voluntarily one night, and the cops had showed up at my mother's door around 4 in the morning. Once again, I had woken up to this knock on the door and had just heard my mother talking to these 2 men, and they were muffled voices, and my mother was a muffled voice as well, and I just heard them talking, and then eventually I heard my mom just break down and start bawling her eyes out. I did not know what happened, and I told myself not to worry about it and to go back to bed. My mother did not tell me for a few days that she knew until she brought it up and said that we would not be seeing anymore, and this is why. When she told me, she broke down and started crying, and was also upset that I didn't tell her. I believe, from what I remember, it was actually brought up after an argument or during an argument, because it was a very negative reaction that she had. She was very, very, very upset that it had happened, but she was very, very, very mad at me that I didn't tell anybody and had blamed me for how long it had lasted. There was a few comments where she made that I had probably liked it, and that's why I didn't tell anybody. And at this time, I was 10 years old and could not comprehend that my mother had just said that, and was uncontrollably crying and screaming at her, telling her that I did not, and that I was scared. It was very, 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 very difficult, and it gave me more of a reason as to why I didn't tell anybody. It was kind of like my nail in the coffin as to, yeah, this is why I didn't tell her. I knew this was going to happen, and at the end of the day, whatever it was, I didn't feel like I mattered to her. More so, I kind of felt like, okay, it's very hard to explain. Like, I kind of was just put on a pedestal in a black void to stand there alone. And from somebody who's been through stuff herself, I would thought that she would have been there for me instead of kicking it down my throat and telling me it was my fault. Around when my mother found out what happened to me from my stepfather, things got drastically worse. Her abuse, her physical abuse, her emotional abuse, and her verbal abuse got a lot worse. Every day I was walking on eggshells with her. I was terrified to go home. I remember countless times where I would be on my knees begging to the teachers to not let me go home because it was scary and my mom was going to hurt me. And I don't know if they didn't believe me or if they didn't have proof or what it was, but they always pushed me to the side and told me that I needed to go home. Nobody ever thought of calling CFS. Nobody ever thought of calling anybody to check in on us. And it was constant hitting, constant kicking, constant yelling, constant name calling. There was one time she had viciously slapped me across the face multiple times, and she had left a handprint on my face. And this is when CFS actually got involved the first time, was because I was walking around at school with a handprint on my face, and it did not fly with anybody. When I was around 11 years old, I picked up on my mom doing hard drugs again, or at least noticeably doing them. She was in and out of multiple relationships with multiple different guys, and it was constant screaming and fighting and hitting between the two of them. There have been countless times where me and my mother have gotten into fights over her hitting my siblings, or over her disappearing for a night and coming home completely pissed drunk or passed out on the couch, not waking up. When I was around 12 years old, things kind of just hit the ceiling. I believe this is when her drug abuse got very, very, very bad, because I was noticeably seeing her body deteriorate and her face start to sag and her hair start to fall out. No matter what I did, it was not good enough for her. She would tell me to clean the kitchen. I'd clean the kitchen and it wasn't done right, and she would scream at me and tell me to do it this way. If I was sweeping and I wasn't sweeping the way she wanted me to, she would pick up the broom and hit me with it. And there was one time I was helping her hang clothes, and I had pushed the clothes to the far right side so I could hang up more, and she had gotten mad at me because I had pushed them together, and she was like, I want the hangers spread apart. And I was like, okay. And I tried explaining to her that I'm only pushing them to the side so I can fit more clothes on, and I will even them out afterwards. And I did this about 3 times, and after the 3rd time, she pushed me into a door and told me to kill myself because I wasn't doing it right. There was one night where we got into a fight. She called me a dirty because of my stepdad sexually assaulting me. When she kicked me out the first time, I was sitting on the couch in the living room with my friend, and she had looked over at me and she was just like, I want you out of my house because you're a threat to me and you're a threat to my family. And it was out of the blue. We weren't talking, we weren't fighting. I was hanging out with my friend and she said this right in front of her, and I said okay. And I looked over at my friend and I was like, call your mom. So she called her mom, and my mom and her mom talked over the phone, and she was like, yeah, I want her. I don't want her here. I want her gone. You can have her. You can take her. So I left and I moved in with my friends, and 2 or 3 days after, my mom's texting me, you need to come home now. You ran away. I'm calling the cops. What the wrong with you? You need to come here and watch the kids. Blah, 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 blah. And so she did. She called the cops, and the cops had showed up and talked to my friend's mother. and she had come back inside after about 10 minutes, and she told me that it's fine and to go back downstairs. So I was unaware of what was going on because they were keeping me in the dark as much as they could. My mother was consistently harassing me and spamming me, and I love you, sweetie, I miss you, sweetie, you need to come home, it's not the same without you. And by this point, I completely hated her. I did not want to go home, I did not want to see her, so I stayed away. Because the cops weren't taking me out of my friend's care, I was able to stay there. Not long after, about 3 months after staying with my friends, I was hospitalized at the Red Deer Hospital, and I was put into a psych ward because I had wanted to kill myself, and my mother was called by the school. That is what would happen, because she was still my legal guardian, and the school had found out that I was cutting myself and doing this and that. So she was called because she was the legal guardian, and she took me straight to the hospital. And then after that, they didn't take me, and 2 days later, same thing happened again. She took me a second time, and then that's when they accepted me, and they had brought me in. The psych ward was probably one of my most traumatic times, even though it was one of my most quiet times. But they had stripped me of everything that had made me comfortable or eased my anxiety. I was not allowed to wear my own clothes. I was not allowed to have my own things. Every hour of the night, they would come in and check in on you and shine a flashlight in your face to make sure that you're asleep or to see if you're awake. You were required to eat, or you would stay longer. You were required to do school, or you'd have to stay longer. And it was kind of like, if you didn't obey, if you did not listen, you are not leaving. You are not getting your clothes, you are not getting visitations, you are not allowed to leave. You are trapped here, you are mummified, you have to do as we say, wear what we want you to wear, do what we want you to do. For 7 days I was in there, and for 7 days I felt like I was in hell. I felt like I was imprisoned. They were like, you're good to go. I think you're good to go, but you have to live with your mother. And I said no, and they're like, you're not allowed to leave here until you agree to live with her. So I had to go back and live with her after I was discharged from the hospital, and that did not make anything any better. So after I had moved back in with her after being discharged from the hospital, she was living in the small 2-bedroom apartment, and I did not have a bedroom because she was not expecting me to ever come back. And we would constantly fight. Around the time when I had called the cops was around when I had my suspicions that something bad was really happening. My mom had left for a weekend, and me and my siblings were staying with our downstairs neighbor, and my friend had come over to stay with us too. So me and my friend had come up with an idea to break into my mother's apartment while she was gone, to search her bedroom and bathroom and see what we could find. Right away, as soon as I opened my mother's door, there was a kid's toy on it, one of those things that you can draw on, and it's like a magnetic drawer, and on that was white powder with a cut up straw. After going through her drawers, I found hundreds of pills. I don't know what they were. I don't know if they were prescriptions or not. None of them had her name on it, and a lot of them were mixed in with each other. That was all of the hard evidence that we could find. So when she arrived, the cops were here waiting for her, and before she got out of the car, they had arrested her. I believe she was held for 1 night before she was let go. A couple weeks after she was arrested, I was given the choice of living with my father or going into foster care, and I had chosen to live with my father. My siblings were separated and put into the foster care system, and I was put on a plane and sent to Ontario to live with my dad. After I moved to Ontario, my mental health drastically got worse, and over the years my relationship with my father did not work out at all, and we completely fell apart. When I was 16 years old, I had moved out and had gone down a very, very, very bad path that did fortunately lead me to where I am today. However, put a lot of obstacles in my way to get here. When I was 17, I got my first apartment with my now current ex-boyfriend, and I was unbelievably happy to have received this great ordeal for me. I was the first person in the area to be my age to get their own place, and it felt like one of my biggest accomplishments, because all I've ever wanted from the age of 9 or 10 was my own place, was my own security, my own safety, and that very helped a lot. Did end up losing the place about a year after, just because rents got too high and I was not able to afford it. But just that year in that apartment gave me so many chances at a better life, created a home where I felt safe. But a couple months after I moved into my apartment, I met my now current boyfriend, and when he came back into my life, it was perfect timing because I was going through a lot, and we just clicked instantly and relived all of our moments from the past and started creating new ones. For the longest time, I believed I was going to be dead by 18. I thought I would have killed myself or overdosed or have gotten killed or have ended up in a very bad situation where I wouldn't have seen past 18. Over the years of the trauma and the hard times, my only therapy was drugs and self-harm. I had tried therapists. Nothing ever clicked with me. My advice for anybody else who might be going through something similar is to just push forward. All I ever did was keep pushing forward, even on the times where I was on my hands and knees potentially dying. It was always just push yourself forward, get up, move. My mom has passed away. She actually overdosed when I was 14 years old. As I was getting ready to go to my friend's house, my dad had called me outside to talk, and I said okay. When I heard his voice, I instantly knew something was wrong. And as I walked to the back door, I just had this turning feeling in my stomach that I could not shake. And when I made it to the door, I saw my stepmom crying, and I walked outside, and my dad had told me that my mom had passed away. And instantly, I started crying, and both my father and my stepmother hugged me. I had collapsed. I could not stand. I had completely numbed out. I was not crying. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was just there. I felt like a corpse. To this day, I still struggle with the fact that she is gone, because there has been so much unspoken words and unfixed situations and unsaid sorries and apologies and I love yous from two of us and from her and my siblings. It was very hard when I got my first car, when I turned 16, when I graduated high school, when I turned 18, when I got engaged, even the bad things, when I got into my first car accident, when I was very low in depression and stuff like that. It was just very hard to not have that. I have goals, dreams, aspirations. I want to be very successful. I just want to be comfortable in a nice home that I built with my fiance, that we can build for a kid and for my animals and live on a farm and just completely disappear from society. That is what my dream is to do. That is where I will find my most happiness and peace, and that is what we are currently working towards.